welcome to Religiously Incorrect Podcast. I am your host, Pastor Todd, and I don't have my co-host with me today, Pastor Jeff. In the words of a Negro funeral, he's in a far better place than I could ever hope to be in. My man, Pastor Jeff, is enjoying his family and celebrating his 50th birthday on a cruise in the Caribbean. So all our religiously correct friends and family, give it up for Pastor Jeff, turning 50 years old. He is officially over the hill. We're applying for a Buckeye card. We're going to get him a cane, a bottle of Bengay. We're going to have that ARP. You know what I'm saying? AARP. We're going to get him a service dog. A comfort pet. We do all that. I'm going to get him a membership to Scope and the Senior Center. I got him ready to go. Trust me, I'll walk in one of them walk-in tubs that you ain't got to climb in.
Life supply.
I'm going to have a bar installed in his bathroom next to the toilet. Get one of them super tall toilets that you got. Listen, my man, I love you. I know you're enjoying the sunny weather in Florida, you and Lady Tiffany and Christian and Grayson. And so I wish you happy birthday. I appreciate the free meal the other night. I wasn't coming no other way to your birthday dinner. Just want to let you know. Wasn't coming no other way. But I'm glad I got to celebrate with you. But I am not alone. I have friends in the house. So I want you to like, share, tag somebody. Tell your friends and family that Religiously Incorrect is back on the air. Sunday night service is on and popping. And I want you to welcome right now, we might as well get it in right now, my good buddy, my little brother, CJ Harrison, and my man from way back, brother from another mother.
That's right.
Big L, Larry Johnson. Let's give it up for them and show them some Religiously Incorrect love. How y'all doing, fellas?
We good, man.
We good. Hey, y'all, we just threw Larry into this. Like 90 seconds ago.
Normally I'm behind the scenes.
Brother.
Doing the graphics.
We did this Kojic style. If you walk into church, you on the program.
Big facts, big facts, big facts.
Go read the
That's
rest
true.
of A selection. I see Brother Larry has walked in today.
The best of you. They ain't even made it in yet.
They can see you through the window. You know you got a song on your heart. Mother want to hear I Won't Complain.
You already got a request in.
You already got a request after the sermon, after the prayer service.
Agreed.
They just call you in,
Agreed.
brothers. I appreciate you chopping it up, being in town. We won't embarrass you too bad. Y'all be able to go home to your families. You know it'll be cool. But you know what? It's heavy to talk about. We'll try not to make it too heavy. But I want to kick it off because there's been like a rash of shootings. Tragic shootings. Some have been fatal. Some have just been injurious, which is a word I learned in seminary school. Injurious. Just mean you got injured. That's all. Okay. But it sounds so good, don't it?
Yeah.
Injurious. But anyway, we're talking about a young man that knocked on the wrong door, picking up his siblings, shot by an older gentleman in the face, and then shot again. The gentleman came out and shot him again when he was on the ground. And luckily, the young man survived.
Dude got released right after he got arrested too.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which is crazy how that happens. Like you can just shoot somebody, you can tell them a story either at the scene or at the jail, and they're like, well, we're not sure if we have enough to charge you yet. And I'm like, for real? For really? Then you got a young lady, she was like 21 years old or something like that, who got into the wrong car or was just trying to pull on the wrong car door, looked like her own, which I just did a couple weeks ago. But he shot her and killed her. Then we got a ball rolled into somebody's yard.
That's different.
Yeah.
God knows my kids.
I didn't even know about that one.
6-year-old girl got shot and her father.
Can't play outside.
Can't play outside.
Yeah.
So this isn't about our normal thing. We just want to take the first 5-8 minutes. It's not the police shooting things, which we're always, worried about how that happens, the shootings of black men disproportionate and all that kind of stuff. This is just guns in people's hands
Crazy.
that don't need to have them. But here's the crazy thing. You don't know who doesn't need to have them until
Agreed.
something pop off.
Agreed.
So, what is your take on the idea that we need these things to protect ourselves? Obviously, we live in a rough world versus what we're seeing people, do with these things. I mean, are we just too angry of a country? We're angry people.
We are very.
So to have, I read an article literally just today. And it said everybody around the world has the same disputes, aggression, mental illnesses, and everything else, whatever it is you want to blame it on. But they don't have the tools in their hands to destroy other people's lives to the degree that we do. So, I mean, where do you sit on this, fellas? I mean, with the gun culture, if we want to call it.
You want to go?
Go ahead. You got it.
For me, I understand the purpose of having guns and owning them to protect yourself, protect your family. I completely understand that. The senselessness of it, definitely. For me, if I was a politician, the senselessness would cause me to have to question what I just put into place.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, we changed the law. People have guns now. We know that. But now you have however many people getting shot on accidental, situations. A ball rolls into a yard, going to the wrong door, and you get shot. Trying to open the door, you get shot. You know what I'm saying? So it causes you to go, these people have guns, but now they're just using excuse. I don't want to say it's an excuse, but using excuses to shoot people.
And the people might not say it outright.
100%.
But once you see around the country with whatever you call the stand your ground laws or the self-defense laws, sooner or later in your psyche, something's going to kind of loosen up where we had this mentality that I have it, but I would only use it in the most extreme circumstances. And the definition of extreme circumstances...
Hey, and I'll comment on that. Extreme for different people has a different meaning.
Right.
And, and see, I'll take it from a parent standpoint because I have children.
Right.
So there's a learning. You have to inform your, you know how we say it. Times have changed.
Correct.
From how when we grew up. I mean, we could actually go outside, go down to the neighbor's house, leave your door open, walk through. But now, I mean, we're talking about a ball in the street.
Yeah.
We're talking about,
we ran through people's yards.
Man, you jumping fences. Yeah, you can't do that now. We're talking
inward knocking.
You can't do that now.
Remember that? Knocking on doors and doing stuff, TP in people's houses.
It's a different world.
And you're right. And like you said, what is extreme to somebody? And I get when you're, and maybe the media and the things we consume have something to do with this because it does push a fear narrative that somebody is always out to harm you. The next knock on the door, the next rustle outside your bushes might be that intruder that they read about or saw on the news somewhere else. Yep. So instead of getting got, I'm gonna get them first.
Exactly.
But now you're not even looking at the context, and there's almost like no room for innocence. Like there are times, like even me and my wife, there are times when like we hear a bump, and she was like, "What was it?" And I'm like, probably just like I still had that mentality that stuff can just be stuff. Don't have to mean nothing. Somebody probably pulled the driveway and pulled out, ain't got to be nothing. But so many people are so on edge all the time.
Now, I have a question.
Yeah.
When it comes to the kid who got shot at the house.
Right. Picking up someone.
You have do you not have cameras? 9 times out of 10, a lot of houses nowadays have these cameras. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, did the house have cameras?
I don't know the answer to that.
Did he have a peephole? You know what I'm saying? Or a little latch where you can...
Yeah. And see, I don't know. And see, then it was a very old white Caucasian man. Hey, Elder Carter. And apparently even like his son or grandson or somebody spoke out and was like he's very disappointed in the type of man he'd become because apparently he had become one of those more extreme people consuming the Fox News or whatever. It might not be that. It might be something else. But again, what does he see even if he looks at the camera? It's a black body, at night. And I said this years ago when my boy wasn't nearly as tall as he is now. I said, I fear for my boy. Because black bodies are often seen as bigger, stronger, and more imposing.
Sometimes a threat.
As a threat. And it could be a 13-year-old boy who just got a little height on him. Or doesn't even. They just seem more than they are simply because they are. And so it's like you hope that maybe Ring cameras and stuff like that will bring some clarity, but that didn't change the fact that people are going to pop. I mean, you can get it after the fact, but the fact is over.
Yeah, exactly.
So I do hope, apparently they did go back and arrest the guy on this. Don't know what happened with I think she's like a cheerleader or some, a young lady. She was Caucasian.
I was like, do they consider that like a manslaughter charge, or accident? Like,
and the legalese on that might depend by state, and all of that. But this whole idea of feeling threatened started with the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin stuff. It started with that. I felt threatened. Did you know that there is a whole organization They pass out these little cards, and they're by this, like, it's almost like insurance for gun owners
Really?
who might use their guns on someone, and it has an 800 number for legal representation and a script of what to say
Wow.
when the officers show up after you shoot somebody. It literally says, say, I feared for my life. I had to kill him or they would harm me.
That's different.
There's literally like, it's like having a Buckeye card or like having a medical card, and they carry it around like a regular insurance card. And if you say the right quote, it at least buys you time. Because if you say that in many places, that's the end of it. Like the man who went home. That's the end of it.
Yeah.
At least until more evidence comes out.
Exactly.
But a dead person can't testify against you. So it's your word
Against theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the Trayvon Martin case and some other ones, it was, I thought he had a gun. Then he found out he didn't have a gun. Then the way that case ended up is, well, because we ended up in a physical altercation, he could have severely harmed me. So that justified the use of a gun. Listen, I've heard them say fists are lethal weapons. When the young man in Niles got killed, his car is a lethal weapon. That could be run over. I'm like, didn't nobody tell y'all to stand in front of that car?
Yeah.
Like, y'all saw him driving like 2 miles an hour in the
exactly.
parking lot. Like, you stood in front of him, he
Anything
kept
that-
coming, and you was like,
like,
all right.
Anything that they see that as a weapon at that time.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. So, I mean, I am no longer able to really justify, and I know you can't take away, not even going to take these people's guns away. Not at this juncture. It'll be a long time, even if you stop manufacturing before you really make a dent. But at the same time, you got to face the facts that on the so-called freest nation in the world, people that,
free already.
you know, supposedly have the most, I guess, you know, ideas of liberty or whatever. Like I talked about a little bit today, like how far does that go though? Because that idea of freedom is, you know, destroying people's lives. And all it will be is, no matter what, don't take my guns. And some people have literally, said as cruelly as possible, yeah, you know, some people might die, but that's the cost of freedom.
Which is wild.
It's whack.
It's
Whack,
lit.
man. So I never thought I'd be that kind of person because I'm still considering, you know, getting my CCW and getting a firearm, but I'm obviously not buying an AR-15.
Never.
And I can't imagine,
well, at least not now.
not now. If they announce that purge though, you know what I'm saying? Or the signs of the times keep progressing.
Ooh, that
Hey.
siren.
Right. But no, I mean, you know, if you want to add your input to the discussion, those of you that are watching us, you know, we'd appreciate it. You can even leave comments. Mike, you want to add anything to it before we go on? Or you don't want your guns taken either?
Well, my whole thing is, okay, everybody's getting killed on the humbug for stuff that's stupid.
Right.
And instead of the politicians making laws to help, they're actually making it easier to buy guns and to carry guns, which doesn't make any sense at all to me. I mean, I'd rather you not do nothing than make it easier.
Yeah.
I guess that's where I'm at with it.
I agree, but I feel like you should make it harder, and it's not unreasonable to make a few extra checks, mental health checks, background checks, waiting period or whatever, especially for your more high-powered stuff.
Something.
They're saying that the young lady that killed the children in the Tennessee school, the Christian school, that she broadcast that she was going to do it to certain people. And I don't know if it was this one or another. She literally wanted to prove that you could get a gun with mental illness. Like, they're not going to stop me. They're going to sell it to me. The state I live in is going to sell it to me. It was a really, you know, her mind was already gone, but it was a really sick way of plotting and planning that out to prove a really sadistic point and then follow through with it. It would have been enough to just prove that you could get one.
Yeah.
But obviously her mind was already to the place of destroying other people's lives and taking her own life. But I mean, you got to take these tools out of people's hands. And people can say you can kill somebody with a knife, you can kill somebody with a car. But man, you can't argue with what people are doing with guns.
Agreed.
From the hood to the suburbs to the schools.
It's
everywhere. It's not just a black problem. It's crazy.
But
Youngstown, man, 17-year-old killed a 15-year-old girl at that party. 17-year-old boy got picked up for that.
Was that
The one in Youngstown.
recent?
Yes, the one last week.
I didn't even know about that.
15-year-old girl got killed at a party. Wow. Rest her soul. She went to Christian, Victory, was it Victory
Valley.
Christian? Valley Christian.
Okay.
You know, at a party. Her and her mother were trying to leave the party because something broke out. 17-year-old dude opened fire. And then this week in Youngstown, they found a 14-year-old in a car asleep with a gun. 14. That's my children's age.
14.
Sleep with a gun actually on him. So, I mean, got to do better, starting with families, and then policy and all of that. But we want to lighten the mood a little bit. Y'all know what time it is. It's time for that good meme of the week.
Meme of the week. Meme of the week.
Welcome to Religiously Incorrect, ladies and gentlemen.
Meme of the week. Meme of the week.
Thank you. Send us your memes of the week.
Meme of the week. Meme of the week.
We are. These are all jokes. We are just playing.
All right, y'all. So today's meme of the week is a video meme. And you might have seen this meme, but even if you have, you need to prepare yourself. The fellas are already laughing. And you might even want to cut your volume down just a little bit.
A lot of it.
Just a lot of bit. If you got headphones on, protect yourself. Let me just do a disclaimer. We are not responsible for any eardrum damage, for any disturbing sounds. But I want you to check out. I guess this is supposed to be praise and worship. Give it to us, Mike.
I'm healed in my mind, yeah. I'm healed in my soul. When I call your name, when I call your name, when I call your name, when I call your name.
Didn't know it until the very end. The song was When I Call Your Name
Oh.
by Todd Delaney.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so first of all, our apologies to Todd Delaney and our condolences because that song is officially murdered
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
Yeah, it's buried. Call
Exactly.
Sterling.
Yeah.
Somebody get somebody to sing I Won't Complain because the song is dead now. But can we stop this?
But I clearly saw other musicians. So was
There were three or four other musicians. There was a guitar player, a bass player,
so
a drummer was going in.
I think I'm blaming the engineer because I think somebody was muted.
Might have been.
All keys, no bass, no
All
electric.
keys, no bass. Yeah, this was a hit job.
Yeah. This is
The BGVs were singing, but it was
Let's just
nobody
be
there.
clear. Let's just be clear. We were all kids who played church once on a random piano or organ, and that's exactly
That's
what
what it sounded
like. That's exactly.
that was it.
Just hit whatever you can. Mark said, "I need those chords." Listen, Mark, I just wish they had one of them, one of them overhead cams.
Man,
So you can see.
So you can see him
Somebody
playing.
talking about, "Ooh, that's it, dog.
See if
That's
there's a
it right
tutorial
there."
on YouTube. that
Why
take
you using 4 fingers? I think he had
Listen,
2. You know?
You know what? I would have bet. Maybe he didn't have any fingers. What if he was thumping for the Lord? And we over here picking on this guy.
Man.
And he was thumping for the Lord,
You ain't
giving
right.
him his best
You ain't
praise. A wrist praise. Enough praise.
You ain't right.
That's the only
You ain't right.
explanation. That's the only explanation for this.
Hey.
But here's the thing. We've been saying it for a while. And I think everybody should agree by now. The pandemic is over. Everybody doesn't need to be on Facebook or streaming their services. Everybody. Nobody's perfect, and that's actually a beautiful thing to me. You have your very polished services, very well produced. You have more of your homegrown joints of your normal Baptist, Pentecostal, whatever. Then you just have trash.
Yeah. Or at least by now, you should have perfected
Something.
that online viewing. You had a long time to kind of get it together. When the pandemic
We've been at
happened.
this too long.
Yeah.
And if you
During the
don't have-
pandemic, we allow some things to,
Correct.
happen. But
Right.
now, no, it's not acceptable.
And let's just be honest. Some of us, and I got a good friend, my buddy Pastor Kevin Carson, my cousin, come in on a sermon. If you don't know or you don't even know what might happen during worship, maybe everything's not appropriate, maybe the music is not where you want it to be, or maybe you just feel like, hey, I don't need to show everything or whatever, just come in on a sermon. Yeah. And cut out before you get, to the end. Like, figure out something to not be this. Okay, and I kind of have a thing where I won't pick on people just because they don't sound that great, because I won't do that. Because I feel like some of this is just, let's just embarrass somebody because they hit a wrong note. Okay, this is like really going in, like you really thought
That
you were
was
doing
much
something
more
with a
than
whole
that.
band, a whole band. So I just feel like we got to do better, y'all.
So I'm curious though, with this video, who's at fault?
Who's
The
at fault?
The worship leader?
Pastor, man.
Blame the pastor.
Pastor should have got up and rebuked everybody. And he obviously should have done it months ago.
Like that Tim Revival video, he said, "All right, I'm tired of hearing this song.
I'm tired of hearing these
Tired of
songs.
hearing the song. Sing something else."
Right, and they was actually sounding good. I mean, y'all tell me. I mean, at a certain point, you have to hear yourself. There's not that much Holy Ghost in the world,
We get some in-ears.
bruh.
You can say, "Oh, that's what I sound like."
I mean, it makes me want to find that church. Like, what did the week before that sound like?
I don't know, man.
You don't know?
I think she was practicing that. She thought she sounded good.
Hey, wait a
She
minute.
practiced that.
Maybe that
She
was.
did. Those were some
Wait,
custom.
wait.
Those
Hey,
some custom ad libs, though.
I found the way out.
Okay.
That was rehearsal.
Was it rehearsal?
That was rehearsal.
Nah, you don't go in at that rehearsal.
That was
She must have
rehearsal.
been getting delivered during rehearsal. And again, everything is not made for TV.
Wow.
You know, so if you have a meme of the week or a video meme, now keep in mind, there's a good chance we've already seen them and there's no guarantee we're going to put them all on. But, you know, I always say the church needs to do better, but just to keep this segment going, I hope most of them don't. Because I need new content. Yes. We need new content. And this is the only way we're going to get it, is by y'all continuing to upload your foolishness. So I really appreciate y'all doing that. I want to thank you for sending in advance whatever you see that's funny, hilarious. And again, I'm not going to embarrass nobody just because they can't, sing or they mispronounce a word or something. But that deserves it.
Yeah,
and I hope they know it. I hope y'all listening
they
to us.
know.
I hope y'all watching us.
They're trending
right now.
so they know.
They are trending.
They're trending.
And you
so
know
they
what?
definitely
There's
know.
nothing worse because it's funny because my bishop got that call because they had a baptism that had a little slip up during the baptism. He wasn't actually in the pool. It was at the church though, and they were baptizing him as he was announcing the names. And I was like, that's the pastor's worst nightmare now, is to realize that something from your church has gone viral because it's not going to be for the right reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going viral because everybody got saved this week.
No.
Man, that was a good word.
You're not going viral. It's one of two things. Either you're giving away cars.
Or you tripped.
Right. No, the only good thing you can go viral for is like giving away a car or something.
Exactly.
Everything else is going to be the most embarrassing moment of your life. And then, we're going to get up on Sunday and say, we know the devil's trying to attack us on the internet. But Satan's not going to get the victory.
Amen. You got a little amen.
You got a little amen in there. All right, let's thank our sponsors, Phillips Care Family of Businesses, Phillips Lawn Care Services. Listen, you ain't cut your yard yet. It's almost May. Call my man Fernando at 330-219-7916. He will get you right. There's no way in the world they still got prices starting at $30 a lawn. This must be them little small patches of grass I saw in New York last week where people had like one push and that was it. Like the lawn was like the size of this table. And but check them out. They got reasonable rates, sticks, trees, leaves, all that stuff. They'll take care of you. They'll do good work. And while you're at it, check out Phillips Care, cleaning service, residential and commercial. If it has to do with a building or a property, they can do it. Floor cleaning, steam cleaning, moving in, moving out, even stuff like appliance installation, gutters, all that jazz. They got a whole crew that can take care of it. And I know because I am a satisfied customer. And I mean that. They have taken care of me on several fronts. And I appreciate them. Call my man 330-219-7916. Tell him Religiously Incorrect sent you. Look him up on Facebook at Phillips Care LLC. Now on to the subject tonight. The subject at hand. Fish out of water.
Fish out of water.
Fish out of water. Hey, listen, if you're watching this, I want you to like, share, comment, tag somebody, because this is going to be an interesting discussion for the next 30 minutes or so, 35 minutes. This is about what it means to come from one culture and in the worship, church, ministry space, end up serving or even leading in another culture. And I think this is so important because we live in a wide open world now. And it used to be, man, you were born Baptist, you died Baptist. If you were like Caucasian Southern Baptist, that's what you are. If you're a Pentecostal, Church of God in Christ, that's just what you are. And then we started to see crossover. Non-denominational churches, people trying different things out. And that, you know what? It's a good thing that we have embrace the freedom to see God's kingdom in so many different expressions. And we're not locked in today. If you ain't hand clap foot stomping, if you ain't wailing that old hymn or whatever, that you ain't having church or you ain't got God or the Holy Ghost. So that's a good thing. But it does create some odd experiences and situations. And both Big L and CJ have extensively served. I can say personally that I've had a lot of experience with different churches, but I've never really been outside the culture of the black church. I've interacted a lot, partnered a lot, served alongside white brothers and sisters. And I do have, I'm really grateful, the way I was raised, this kind of ability to fit in anywhere. I could sit down at the piano as a young man and play the CCM stuff before it was popular, by the way. Before a lot of churches were doing it. But then I watched a lot of my brothers, maybe take on positions, get hired at churches, relocate, get exposed. So both of my brothers here were raised Church of God in Christ. Church of God in Christ, their formative years, their young years, and hardcore, by the way. We ain't talking about that new stuff y'all see on the internet now, with the lights and
good old fashioned
and the LED
culture.
Screens. We talking about Tarian services, Friday night. Jesus. Listen, if Mother Marsha's watching, she just felt something. She just felt something right there.
She got a quiver.
Temple service. She got not a quiver, not a quickening. Elder span in the chapel.
Woo,
brother,
man, come on. It was hot. No air conditioning.
No air conditioning. St. James Friday night services, evangelistic.
I would sleep.
I
was a kid. I would knock out.
You was sleep.
CJ was laid out on them pews. But then God expanded your horizons. Opportunities came. I've witnessed Larry do wonderful things leading worship right here in the Valley at a very prominent. She felt it. I told y'all. Give us a little bit more, Mike. Come on. Give us a little bit more. She felt it. But you served at a very prominent, I guess you'd call it evangelical church, if you want to call it that. Now, thankfully, multicultural, evangelical church, but it lends towards what we would think is white church. It lends, you would just think it ain't black, soulful, screaming, hooping there for 6 hours. It's a little more organized. They get out on time.
Yep.
They know what they're going to sing when they show up. They got the chords right. They don't remix it in the middle of the song. Okay, the organist don't have a whole solo for like 20 minutes.
There's no organ, period.
There's no organ, period. Half the time. CJ was raised St. James, at least in part Church of God in Christ, and then made transition to a prominent evangelical church here in the Valley, and then went to, say it for me,
Central Bible College for all of those
Bible College.
out there. The Central Bible College.
The Central Bible College. Is that like the Ohio State of Bible Colleges or something?
Not in Ohio. And
not,
it is.
But I'm saying it's like the though. It's the.
A lot of famous people that have done stuff in the AG world and just church world period. A lot of them were.
Who like Carmen? Sandy Patty. You think I don't know these names?
Hey, you know them.
Sandy Patty, Michael W. Smith.
A lot of them came from CBC.
Is that right?
A lot.
Give me some names, but name drop.
It's too.
See, it's too many.
It's too many people to drop names.
I feel it.
I'm talking across the world.
And you made it. That's like the Harvard. It's like how black people go. You went to Harvard or Morehouse, I should say, or Howard. And so then you ended up in Springfield, Missouri.
Yes, sir.
Evangel University.
Yeah.
And then served at an evangelical church there. So I want to ask you fellas, like, going in and maybe in your first experiences, what was your first thought when you walked in? Did you walk in skeptical? Like, I know when I walked in the church, first of all, there's just this arrogance that if you're raised in the black church, there's just something about it that it feels like nothing else can compare. It really does, because it was so hardcore, so powerful, preaching. It's just so in your face that when you go to these more somewhat mellow or organized or structured, it almost feels like this can't be the Holy Ghost. Like the Holy Ghost is spitting and slobbing on people and running up and down aisles, right? What was your first impression? Did you feel it was better, or did you have to kind of be won over? Or
I don't know. I think for me, I was kind of used to it, first of all.
Okay.
Because of the fact that from my singing background, it wasn't always listening to the Kirk Franklin. It was listening back in the day. It was the Toby Max. So with that being said, you was kind of already ready for that different worship experience. But when you go to those type churches or that type of denomination, you realize, because I was brought up you know, hey, we the only church going to heaven.
Right. Everybody else is
Everybody
lost.
else, nobody else is saved, but the ones that attend this church. But you start to find out.
I
look,
was done for,
But
man.
look, there are other churches that believe in the same thing you do, and there's people getting, you know, delivered and miracles happening at a whole nother church and a different denomination.
Right.
So there you start to see that, wow, you know, there's this closed-minded thing to where you've had, you know, growing up. But when you start to see these other churches, man, you know, and these other denominations, and I mean, I was blessed to where I think, and for me, from a ministry standpoint, from a singing standpoint, you know, my ministry really opened up in the other church that I was attending. You know, leading worship. I mean, it was like I literally found my identity.
Wow.
So that was a whole new avenue, and it was like, wow, it was something that, you know, you hadn't really viewed or seen before. So you had to embrace it. You couldn't just, you know, just kind of brush it off your shoulder. You know, you really had to say like, wow, like, you know, I know what was happening over here. And a lot of times what I've realized, even in the churches that I came up in, we always like to say praise and worship. But there's a lot of praising going on. And that's great.
Right.
But there's not a whole lot of
Not
worship.
a whole lot of worship.
And it's
Right.
a different, there's a different viewpoint of the songs. And when you can see people going to worship,
Right.
we're so used to kind of pumping and prime. We like, we ain't gonna pump you and prime you.
And then we pump you
but
and
we
prime
pump
you.
and prime you.
As soon as we get done saying,
Yeah,
I'm not your
exactly.
cheerleader,
Yeah, I'm not,
we
yeah,
start cheerleading.
Come on, Why? Come on. You act like God ain't done nothing for you.
Stop the song. Stop the
Stop
song.
the
right
song,
quick.
stop- But then you go over to these, you know, the other churches, and the moment you start singing the worship song, you see all these, you know, everyone coming up to the front, everyone
Right.
with their hands up. So I think at the end of the day, I think that experience has been great.
Right.
For me, because you get to see the other side. There are some people who are still, in my opinion, I call it closed-minded. There are some people who are still like that, you know, where it's like, if it's not, you know, if it's not Kojic, if it's not this, if it's not that, then it's like, man, look, it's like, as we always like to say, God is not coming back for denomination, right?
Correct. Correct.
He's not. I didn't, you know. So if that is the case, you can't be just bound by saying this is the only
Right.
church or whatever
Right.
that's going to heaven. No.
And the crazy thing is, for me is some of us that are saying that we have taken what we want from other cultures,
Agreed.
remixed and taken in so much into our churches when it fits us.
Exactly.
And then we still turn around and act as if it's inferior if other cultures or other churches, denominations do it their way.
Wait, and let me add. So a lot of the songs that you know,
Come from these-
so- and you're reminded. I have to tell some people, you do realize that song that you love so much is a CCM song.
Right. Yep.
Oh, really?
I don't care how much hollering you put on top
Exactly.
of it.
Like, who's Matthew West? Oh, who? Yeah, like, yeah.
Yeah,
you know?
that's been on it. CJ, what's been your experience when you first got exposed? Now, you were a teenager
Yeah, I was
going
gonna
into
say-
Highway.
So you got exposed younger or old, like in your 20s?
Like actually
older.
going and serving.
Going
like
serving.
Going to serve, yeah. So I was in my 30s.
30s. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I had the experience of doing it when I was in high school.
Okay.
Was that freshman year almost? Now, the cool thing about it for me was being youth, they always had something going on.
Okay.
So the youth group was cool, which is why I started going. A young lady by the name of Stephanie invited me to, we name dropping?
Yeah, we name dropping, man.
Yeah.
We name dropping.
I grew up at Highway. Pastor Moore was a pastor at the time. Good guy. How you doing, sir? She invited me, and I started attending because the youth group was always doing something. They always had random pizza parties. When I was in high school, we hosted a fifth quarter after the first 5 home games. We would host everybody from the games, come to church, do stuff like that.
I'm about to steal that idea, by the way.
Oh, do it. It was great. It was awesome.
We probably have a bunch of fights, but I mean, it is what it is.
Hey,
You know,
you
you can do that in Austin Town.
No, you could do it. You can do it here. I promise you, because we had cats
Hey,
pulling up.
put the camera on me so I can get my lip.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's hilarious.
Yeah, right.
You don't know these kids, bro.
Hey, I believe in y'all. I believe in y'all. Give me a tight zoom, cameraman.
Tight zoom.
Tight zoom.
Give me a tight
Instead of
zoom. I
tight
believe in
zoom.
Tight
y'all.
zoom
I
and tell
believe
these-
in y'all.
CJ's like, I believe in y'all.
But yeah, so going into that world as a teenager, I was exposed to the youth side of it, not having been a grown up in it. It was great because there was youth camp in the summer. I was involved in this thing called Fine Arts, which opened up a whole bunch of doors for me.
Okay.
And then college. So high school, go through that. It was great. I loved it, enjoyed it. When you get older, obviously with life, your brain just opens up and you start seeing things. And then you see the behind the scenes.
Right.
You're like, oh, snap. And then you see other things and you're like, oh, I'm a grown up now in this. This is
Right.
what this looks like.
Right.
It's not just what I'm used to doing it, playing every day. There was a joke at my church. I was the hardest working man in the church. Only because Sundays I would do.
They didn't call you slave today. Okay, just making sure.
Man, look,
I just making sure, man.
Deborah was not having that.
Listen, I know.
That would have been all bad.
Bro, you look like you came out the field after
Well,
church.
nah, Deborah was. She was
Show
shut
your
that down so
sweating.
fast.
You want a glass of lemonade?
Because they were doing so many services Sunday morning,
Right.
sound check,
Right.
and then we were still doing night services, and I had youth night and regular service night, so I have to go sound check,
basically a
sound
coaching
checks.
church.
You know what I'm saying? Two sound checks going back and forth, so I was just running all over the place.
That's sound check's not. That's not.
Right.
That's funny. He said the sound check. That's their song. We'll do that.
You better figure it out in praise and worship. That's their first devotional song.
Look, but yeah, it was a great experience because I had never experienced it before. As I got older, it kind of started to shift because I realized what I missed. And I mean, I'm around CCM music for, let's say, 6 years straight. No choir, no Fred. Obviously, I'm still listening to that stuff because I'm involved in music.
Right.
But I'm just on a regular basis of getting hit with an encouraging song, not a worship song.
Right. The old school encouragement.
saying?
Baby need a pair of shoes.
Literally.
Right.
A song
right.
that will have...
And they got a light bill due.
Jesus will work it out.
Jesus will work
You
it
know
out.
what I'm saying? The stuff
They don't
that-
say stuff like that.
Stuff that'll
They-
have me just sitting there like, man.
They don't
this-
sing about your baby at home hungry and
and your
stuff like
telephone
that.
disconnect.
Right. They're waiting on the next paycheck.
They're not singing simple songs like "Thank you, Lord."
Right.
Like you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like the
Yeah.
simple stuff, and I'm like, CJ, I need that.
So is it fair to say then, and I don't mean to cut it off,
you
because I
good,
want
you good.
is it fair to say then, as Larry said, that a lot of our churches have a lot of praise and gratitude songs and commitment songs and I'm going to live so God can use me, all that stuff, but not much worship. Is there a little bit of the flip side in CCM where it's a lot of worship and adoration, but not a lot of God gonna make a way for you right now, like that? They talk about healing, they talk about that,
Yeah.
but I mean, we be raw with it because you come for everybody broke, everybody tired, you know, and so we have that real. So there's a little bit of that part missing of that
100%.
real personal, grimy,
100%,
you know.
100%, and that's where you get your. Like he said the name, I'll just use him as an example. Matthew West does write worship music too,
Right.
But he also does have songs that will be more encouraging. Your
Gotcha.
Toby Max, stuff
Right.
like that. You know what I'm saying? So they have it. It just
They be telling life stories and stuff. I mean, we just soldiers in the army of the Lord over here.
You know what I'm saying?
You know, God is a good God. And that's
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
That's what we got. God is a good God, and we gonna
Jesus
work
on the
that for
main
13. We gonna work
line.
that for 13
Yeah.
And
minutes.
these are songs that are gonna stay in the church forever.
They're not going anywhere.
Nowhere. Like
Right.
there's not songs like that.
Hymns,
Like
absolutely.
they have hymns, don't get me wrong, but just randomly in the middle
Right.
out of nowhere, just I know I've been changed.
That's
not
correct.
happening. Just,
Correct.
you know what I'm saying? Just something random like that's not happening.
Right.
And those moments though, as a kid, I remember watching people experience that and things happen and breakouts happen and they just, oh, thank you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it was changed that was actually happening because they needed it.
Right.
And as I got older, I'm like, I need that back in my life.
I feel it.
You know what I'm saying? So
I feel it. You know, I believe that thankfully, because of these experiences, and we might be a part of that bridge generation where we have been raised in the old, exposed to the new, and we can see the balance between the two. We've already had, you know, some of the younger set on our show and talking about new. You know what I mean? Then we've had some conversations about old. And there's going to be this gulf until one day, unfortunately, many of the older ones are going to die, pass away. You know, you give it 20, 25, 30 years, it's not going to be as much old around. And we'll be the last people kind of carrying that balance, the balance of it. Like, we still remember, we know how to go back to it. We know how to drive it. And I wonder where that's going to go. But when you talked about you got grown and you saw things, and something that kind of pricked me because I've always been a process, managerial, professional guy. I'm a PK. I was like dad's admin and all that stuff. I knew that our contemporaries, and by the way, let me just throw this in here. For some reason, every time we think of white church or evangelical church, we think mega. And that's not true.
Not at all.
It's every, unless you go down to the Bible Belt or something like that, you still have a bunch of small congregations in the white community too. Now, what they probably don't do is everybody and their cousin start a church just because,
There's not one on every corner.
there's not one on every corner in the way you see. Do you know that, to my knowledge,
think
at
so?
least
no, there was
in some places,
where I was. It was
and
churches every
again,
block
Bible Belt though,
around.
but
Yeah.
Bible Belt.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, up here in Warren, to my knowledge, I think there is only one white Baptist church, maybe two, in the entire city. One white Baptist church and like 7 black Baptist churches, for instance. So there's obviously a terrible like ratio problem going on. And again, I say it all the time, once upon a time, it might have been necessary or justified or whatever. Giant families, city exploding. And that is obviously not now. Okay, we get it. But we assume that we're looking at mega churches. They all have the best of everything and the most money and all of that. Okay, I'll be honest. I don't see a lot of us necessarily being attracted to those smaller family white or evangelical congregations. We're usually attracted to more successful, structured, well-run
Makes sense.
organizations, and so that becomes our standard of comparison. And how can you compare a Victory or a Highway to like a Saint whatever Baptist church or Kojic church that's just making it off whoever in the hood lives there and whatever long-term member is? Like, how could you compare when there probably are 50, 60 other white churches that are not big, they're struggling, they have a little fuss and fights, but then we get grown and we find out that they have power struggles, they have layoffs. I've heard some stories about everybody got laid off at the pastor's family. Obviously money and integrity issues, favoritism, judgment, people being sat down, and maybe this one didn't get the same.
All of those.
So when you recognize that, and it's been a bugger for me, not that we are not deserving of criticisms that our culture takes, because we definitely do. We know the stories firsthand. But that sometimes you think you're running away from humans being humans and church folk being church folk. Because, and I'm not saying you ran away, but you know what I mean? I'm in this place, and I'm like, nah, they just real professional. You don't see the mess. It's in the back room in the boardroom somewhere.
Exactly.
It didn't break out in the middle of church, or it wasn't in the parking lot, but they probably had a real good Zoom about that joint.
Oh, yeah.
That's where
Somebody might have lost their job.
Man, lost their key card, and they put their key card in the slot and it just
Why
worked.
is working? Why my fob working? The fob is the thing.
The key fob,
Fob ain't working.
Like, why?
That's the evangelical way.
Because a lot of them doors, is locked.
Like, my phone not working. Nah, those back room, those board. The board room is probably the scariest place
Okay.
in the church. Only because, and a lot of black churches ran like this, where the pastor, or maybe this might be a little bit different. The pastor, and this is some of the experiences I've had. The pastor runs the church, but the board says everything.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, the pastor ultimately has the final say.
Right.
But if the board's not going for it, it's not happening.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then in some of these
It's
cases,
corporate for better or for worse. Like
100%.
better in some ways, because it's not just off the cuff junk. You have people, professional. A lot of times they're professionals. They know what they're doing. They're finance people. And
that right there, the finances on that is seeing how they maneuver in that area and how they treat it with the board is scary.
right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just how they do whatever. The board is probably the scariest place, because all conversations, the list that you said, every single thing I've seen, let's say Monday, board's going to have a meeting about whatever. Come Friday or even that next Sunday, it's 3 or 4 families gone. You like, what happened? Well,
Wow.
the board made a decision.
Oh.
And you like, oh, snap.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You're like, oh, this
Right.
looks completely different now. So.
I've watched that from a distance. Watched that from a distance. Conversed with some very good friends who are in those circumstances and situations, and hearing it again, part of me says, "Hey, it looks better and cleaner, but it's really the same imperfections, the same." And honestly, I wish sometimes we could do things better and cleaner.
Yeah,
Because some stuff just be so messy and embarrassing and damaging publicly. But like you said, those families that, let's just say, hey, dude, it's just not the worship leader this week. It's just over. Yeah. And sometimes if their salary's tied to that or whatever that goes on with that, how devastating that can be. And then they go through the same things. But a part of me just looks at it like, all right, maybe certain people are built for handling things certain ways. And this is the way minority cultures, your more homegrown, organic, smaller churches, this is what we deal with, you know, and this is how they deal with it. And it's not really better, it's different. You know, it's different, but it's a lot of the same thing. And what you said, even about the money, listen, I'm just going to say this, and it's not a knock, it's not a criticism. But if you don't think that big church with the lights that does, and I'm not saying it to like make a caricature or pick on nobody, but if you don't think that guy that tells you he doesn't care about the money and we're just here to serve and he's smiling all nice and he's not giving the 3-hour appeal, they care.
They care.
That boardroom cares. They're counting that budget. They're paying. Now we're just raw about it. We just say, bring the tables up.
But wait a minute.
Right.
Can we talk about the fact that some of those churches, they are about business?
They are.
You know, so from the churches that I've come from in the past, I mean, come on. I mean, it was about, writing the offerings on a piece of paper on a notebook. And if you wanted to see the records, you simply, opened up the Trapper Keeper.
Absolutely. Shoebox. When I was working for U.S. Bank in Cleveland, they purposely assigned me when I went into the small business division to black churches and businesses, because the business bankers didn't want to be bothered with them. You had a 19, 20-year-old kid driving around Cleveland and Akron, and when the church inevitably calls and wants a loan, and they have some big picture on the wall of some building they're going to build, they're like, all right, we're going to send this kid with a Polaroid camera and a little BlackBerry over there. And I'm like, all right, I need to see, initial financials. I need to see your giving units. Like, what's that?
Yeah, what's that?
Giving units are how many verified giving families or individuals that have given over a certain threshold, and you can verify them 2 or 3 years back or whatever, and you got to have at least 60 of those, depending on what you're asking for or whatever. They reach in, literally, Trapper Keeper, shoebox, envelope of receipts, just tithe envelopes, cash, paying people in cash,
yes,
and stuff like that. So you are right, they're about their business, but when you're about your business, you have to be a little more brutal.
Exactly.
You have to be a little more cutthroat. I hate to use that word, but you do, because if somebody's short on, we short, I can go in my pocket and take care of the organist.
What happened to that worship leader? Well, it wasn't because he didn't want to come. Just that they stopped paying him.
It's over. It's done. Right. So and I told a friend of mine, and I love her to death. She was going to a prominent church in this area, and she gave me this really nice, beautiful brochure. And it was like a $4 million capital campaign to do all of these massive improvements, like an addition, going to revamp the whole sanctuary, parking lot, all this stuff. And I'm like, this is wonderful. And I said, but the truth of the matter is, this is the exact same fundraising the Baptist church down the street is trying to get $20,000 at their level. And they're doing fish dinners and rib dinners or whatever. This person just has access to a marketing person. He has professional administrative staff, graphic design on staff, and they know how to use the best in corporate nonprofit terminology. They don't sound like we sound when they're raising money. They don't say the phrases. They don't get up and talk about, well, a man robbed God, you robbing him right now. And give us your Applebee's money. You know how we say, we know you're going to Waffle House after this, and coming back around. You never hear, we're $37 short. We're
going to raise a third offering.
We're going to raise a third offering. We're going to come back around.
If anything, you'll hear, I believe there's some more people that want to give a little bit more. We're going to take another offering. Done.
And it's done, too.
Done.
And so, I love the idea of growing up in something, and without attacking anybody, you just recognize there's more equality than you think there is.
Exactly.
But there's no doubt that there are distinct differences, and that is attractive. Because one thing I told some people, we as black people, younger black millennials, Gen Xers, whatever, going down the line, we are exposed to a broader world. We are smarter. And when I say smarter, I don't mean we're wiser than our parents or grandparents, but we have more access to the type of information, knowledge, not just school knowledge, but you can read articles. You can see what the world works like. And you will start to question, why are we still doing it like this? And we see other models, like you said, is working better. And So it's not that we should change ourselves completely, but we should be cognizant that we're dealing with a different generation that expects more.
Exactly.
And has seen people operate in a better way. I want to ask you something about the worship thing, though.
Okay.
You talked about, and I'm sure both of you experience this, where you walk in and the worship is just flowing, and people just walk to the front, and people just whatever wave their hands, And I'll be honest, man, watching white people worship in some of these churches, it's almost like watching like a rock concert or something. Like
Hey, don't go to a convention, dog. You're gonna be like, oh man, it's funny.
Do you feel? Because I feel, and I could be wrong, and you could tell me if I'm wrong. Do you feel that there is a little bit of contrived, learned, and rehearsed behavior in the same way that we rehearse the behavior of grab your tambourine,
Hey, I'm sure.
hand clap, foot stomp, but that seems so much sincere? Is it really more sincere or more worshipy, or is it different than what we're used to?
Well, it's different.
Because do we really want people to come up in the front of the Baptist church while the deacons are singing and be like clapping in their
I mean, probably we're gonna be like, if you don't go sit down.
That's what I'm saying. Like, do we really want? Honestly,
Hey, I think.
would you really want people at the temple to like rest the stage as soon as
I
y'all?
really think it depends on the song. I mean, if it was
Right.
a worship song, I mean, I think that it would be pretty awesome, man, to kind of see. You know what I mean? But yeah, I get it. I mean, it's
When we used to
but
worship,
I do feel.
Do you remember when the church used to come and worship with us at Agape? And like the guy would just come up to the front on like the first song and just lay on the floor, like,
everybody looking at him?
yeah, I'm like, dude, like, bro, he's like a white guy.
But-
yeah, he would just lay on the floor. I'm like, bro,
Why ain't y'all join him?
yeah. Like, I thought he was having a seizure or
He was,
something, man.
he was by himself.
Listen, first of all, by the time you end up on the floor in one of our churches, you didn't either have like a Baptist fit or been slayed in the spirit, and they gotta like drag you out and give you smelling salts.
Hey.
You know what I'm saying? But they just do it. They just go.
And if you got pews, you better hope somebody caught you.
Bruh, you have a broke back,
Be done.
twisted ankles. But do you feel there's a little bit of rehearsal and learned behavior like to that model of music starts, everyone just gets up and starts walking to the front, or a portion of people?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so. I mean, kind of like, I mean, and you can respond, CJ, too. Just like in our churches, a lot of times what moves us is what? The beat.
The beat.
You know, that was a good song when I started. Oh, this is my song.
Right. You get the opening chords.
Yeah. Versus, so, but I will say, but then even in like some of the worship songs, it's not about the beat at all. You know, it's I don't know if they playing the 2 chords or whatever, and it's more about the lyrics. But I will say,
And it do be 2 chords too.
Yeah. But I do feel it's kind of the pattern. But again, I mean, it is.
What do they do
so.
if like worship? Like, you know how we used to do, like we said earlier, like if service been dry for a while, and then the pastor or the evangelist, the mother, whoever start pushing real hard, or I mean, we used to do stuff like if service was dry when I was growing up young. This is when my daddy became pastor. Man, they would literally like stop the service and be like, we gonna cast the devil out right now because something's hindering our praise. We would do like point to the door and say, devil, you gotta get out, and all that stuff, like, or just dry seasons. You know how the pastor would just get up and kind of like give y'all the pep talk. The Kojic pep talk, like, we need to get back to holiness, y'all. We need to get on our faces. Like, what happens when things start to like level, plateau? It's starting to feel a little mundane. How do they deal with those? Do those seasons seem to happen, or how do they deal with them?
They happen.
Okay. Is that when the worship leader gets his key fob and stop working?
That's hilarious. They do happen, and they just keep going through.
Okay.
I can't tell you how many services I've gone through, no matter the instrument or whatever, where I'm leading worship or on stage doing it and watching people not respond to anything.
Nothing.
They literally, because it's already mapped out, so 9 times out of 10. So it's like we're finishing these 3 songs no matter what.
Right.
Whereas if we're feeling some sort of way at church, we can just be like, all right, we're not doing the last song and continue with service.
Right.
These 3 songs
Yeah,
are
we're not
doing them
gonna kill
3
it. They gonna do
songs.
them 3
These 3
songs.
songs they're happening, whether you want them to or not.
Now the second one might end a little faster, but we going on.
The second song will be a
sing-
version
We're
of
gonna
the
run through that course.
chorus.
We're gonna run through that course quicker than we did
gonna
before.
happen.
That's literally what happens. They'll
So do they just wait for kind of like a new, fresh breakout, so to speak? Like sooner or later, we just feel it's gonna come back around to that place of vibrancy and the energy again, or Or is there a time where like pastor calls a fast or something, or he calls in the leaders, or he,
if it's hard to explain because every church is obviously different.
Yeah.
Some churches will definitely do the altar call thing.
Okay.
And hit you with one of these. Not making fun of y'all, by the way.
Now make fun of him, bro.
I just feel something in the room right now. Can we have the prayer workers come down? We're going to start a prayer line.
Okay.
If you have prayer, would you come on down? Just begin to relinquish those things
Okay.
off of you. You know what I'm saying? And they'll do that.
That's
and
their
then
point to the door. That's their point to the door and
point
get the
to
devil out of
you know
here.
what
I
I'm
got
saying?
you.
And then
See?
third
But they do it
song-
so well.
third-
It's so smooth.
Exactly.
You right.
Or I would.
Pastor Juan was never gonna get up and just start fussing at folks. Like,
No.
y'all don't want to praise him.
No.
he was never gonna get up and just, Okay, Janet said Pastor Locke would definitely call the leaders in.
There you go.
And that makes sense just because you're like, all right, leaders, come up. I know that y'all are going to be the ones to kind of start the
You
fire,
gonna push
start the
this.
flame. You're going to push it.
Right.
So I get that.
Right. And I love Pastor Locke. He's absolutely right. I would do that. I even did it at second a couple times. Telling the deacons, but what you got?
Well, here's the other thing too.
Right.
You're gonna get some emails that tells you do not sing no songs.
Do not sing-
next.
Is that
Because
right?
I've heard it. Just
That's
say, hey,
funny.
we can't do that song no more. We can't do this no more because the staff got some emails. Whether if it be from the congregation or from other people on the staff. So there's some communication.
So let's be clear here.
The stuff that happens to you on a regular basis happens to
So there's some every praise songs,
Yes.
some how
Yeah.
great is
There
our
are
God
those.
songs.
Yeah.
There's some songs that folks are just tired of hearing. Sold out. They don't want to hear sold out no more.
And they're gonna let you know.
They gonna let you
They'll
know.
definitely let you know.
So what are some of the evangelical worn out worship songs that y'all ran into and they said we don't want to hear that no more?
I didn't get the emails.
Okay.
Oceans.
We don't want to hear Oceans.
I don't wanna hear
Leave me where my trust is without whatever borders. Yeah.
Oceans is one.
Good Father hasn't gotten there yet.
Father is low key on that list.
It's on the way.
But the bridge kind of saves it.
I know how great is our God got there eventually.
Didn't.
It never
Our
got
God
there.
never got to that point.
It's got there with me.
They can pull that song out at any point in time.
It depends on the
Everywhere.
church.
It depends on the church.
Everywhere I've been, they be like, oh yeah, we love it. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Right.
Like, okay.
All right, whatever.
Like it's a CCM song. Yeah, keep singing it.
Yeah,
We'll put our spin on it.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, because like you said, you get those emails.
You do.
What will be an email there? Janet says, I abhor oceans. Man, I wanted to drown in the ocean. I wanted to drown. Throw it in the Bermuda Triangle somewhere.
That's better.
Anywhere. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the thing that gives me comfort is that these things that we have challenges in our little fellowships and churches and communities, they really do happen everywhere. It really does.
Agreed.
But I do feel that there is stuff you can learn and glean. What you said was people are about business. You can't argue with the fact. And again, I think that we are a little biased. And I will say that I can't deny that those, what should I say, flagship evangelical CCM style churches, the flagship ones or even the mid-sized ones that run themselves very well, they do present a different model of what you say being about business. And people are attracted to results.
Agreed.
But at the flip side, there is sometimes an inherent difference in what those churches have at their disposal to work with. And I've told friends, and I've said this phrase on this show a couple of times, that I have friends that I can be very honest with. And to say, and I won't say the name of the church, but if you know Warren, then you know what church I'm talking about. But I have good friends at this church, and it's a wonderful partnership. But when we talk about the things that they're able to do versus what we're able to do, at one time, our congregation at Second was the master, actually bigger than theirs. You know what I mean, at one point. But I told him, I said, you're working with East Market money, and I'm working with 4th Street money. And on top of that, the cultural expectations of what people think we ought to do for them are far different. Far more people could pass away in the churches you all served at, but I bet you they don't do as many funerals in the sanctuary, calling on the ushers, the musicians, the pastor, and they sure ain't frying no chicken like a typical black church would be demanded of. And so there's a different demand on what we're asked to do, because for black culture, hey, I ain't had a funeral if I ain't in the church. I don't care if dude, shot 9,000 people. I don't care if he never believed in God. Half of them be calling themselves like Abraham X and stuff. And then as soon as they die, they be like, Jerome Johnson's funeral will be at Second Baptist Church. And we be at there talking about how he loved the Lord and grew up in Sunday school. And I'm like, this dude didn't even love Jesus at all. But that's the expectation that we have. Yeah. That I can count on my hand. And by the way, okay, here's another bad one. How many people, y'alls, that go to churches outside of our community, then as soon as one of your loved ones die or something, come right back and say, we need a church to have a funeral in, back in the black community. That happens, I'll tell you, a lot.
Okay.
They attend churches that are evangelical, modern, contemporary, whatever. But when time comes for that down-home need, they come back home. And on account of my cousin, where I was raised, or I'm just here, or I'm just known, and then we look like the ungracious ones if we say, oh, you call your pastor.
Yeah.
Like, that's where you've been tithing. That's where you, and if they are just gonna come and visit or send the associate to the funeral home to visit you, that's what they do. And I want to talk about the cultural difference. I'm not just talking about the worship beam. I'm talking about the cultural differences and expectations. Have you seen certain things when you're like, okay, if I was back home with my peoples,
that wouldn't happen.
They'll handle this like this.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
Too many times.
can you think of some things or some ways, like, that kind of pops out and shows itself?
I'll even go off of that.
Okay.
I've attended one I remember for sure because I was friends, cool with the family. I think I've been to 2 funerals at like the church that the person attended.
Right.
I've never, like, that genuinely has never ever happened. It's weird. I never even thought about it, but that's definitely one.
Speaking of which, we need you for a funeral this week. Need you to call the crew,
I got you.
Just letting you know now, live on TV, so you can.
That's one. The sit down thing you mentioned.
Okay.
The sit down thing is hilarious to me.
Unpack it, bro.
Only because.
But whatever you didn't sign in your NDA agreement.
That's hilarious.
Because they got them too.
They do have contracts.
I feel it. Did your mic come out?
Oh, I got a plug. Oh, my bad. You got me now? Cool.
Okay. Sorry, y'all.
Sorry about that, everybody. The sit down thing is the funniest. We'll sit down I'm gonna sit you down for a week or 2.
Okay.
Month maybe max.
In context.
Ours.
Okay.
You will have to go through a restoration process, interviews, read a couple books, sit with somebody, talk to the pastor, and then
Are you getting paid during this
after
time?
so many times, then you come after so much, then you can come back. And I'm not even talking to a person serving on staff.
You're talking about as a volunteer.
I'm just talking about a volunteer.
Wow.
6 months, low key, depending on where you are.
Right.
6 months to get back into serving where you were.
Right.
Having done whatever it is that caused you to get sat down. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And stuff like that. I'm like, I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, that's a lot to be having. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and we have those debates within our churches. Like, is it right to sit people down and embarrass them?
It is.
And people forget. And I know of a circumstance right now where the same stuff they used to preach on us about, literally. Now they don't call it shacking like we used to do, but they found out a couple was living together, supposed to be getting married, not yet married, and that was a sit-down situation in an evangelical church. You don't think this happens in other? Trust me.
What happens?
Yes.
You will get called out for behaviors or, sinful lifestyles.
Borderline get kicked out of the church.
Like don't think this is just some old school embarrassment stuff calling you to the front like we're used to. And it happens maybe differently, but they're still gonna call you on it.
100%.
Many places. And just like there are some places that are overlooked in our culture, there's places that are overlooked in other cultures. Everybody is not on this perfectly pure, And I hate when people say, well, I went to the white church because they're not judgmental. No, you just don't hear them judging you.
Oh, they are judging the mess out of you.
You just don't know them well enough.
Exactly.
Because you're only down the street from them. But, you know, humans judge.
Exactly.
You know, they're not self-righteous. They're not hypocrites. Everybody
Humans.
has that
Yeah.
going on somewhere. You know what I mean? So I like how you said that. Like that sit down 6 months, Doc.
Yeah, I know firsthand of many situations where people were sat down for 6 months,
Right.
couldn't serve, only could come to the church, could
Right.
serve nothing.
Right. Mike, you want to pop in or you had something? I saw him making a move.
Yeah, I'm kind of sitting on this question. When did praise and worship creep into, I guess creep is a bad word, but you know what I mean. When did praise and worship come into the black church?
That's a good question.
You know, growing up, it was always testimony service and this and that. Then all of a sudden it switched. When was that and how did that come about?
The 90s,
yeah.
Fred Hammond.
80s for some of us.
Yeah.
Because
True, because I was
Agape was one of those churches. Agape, I would put in the category of some of those early 80s, because they started in 83. Matter of fact, they're turning 40 this year. Y'all better invite me to this anniversary.
Y'all heard him.
Listen, I know y'all be lurking. If
put
y'all
it
don't
out
invite
there.
me, I'm putting it out there. It's going to be a problem. I'm going to bust y'all party up. If y'all don't invite me,
You want that zoomed up?
I'm
You want that zoomed
Hey,
going to cut the power to y'all churches. I'm going to
Zoomed in shot.
Let's get that close up.
zoom in that shot. Let me tell you, y'all better invite me, or I will show up the night before the service and switch all your mic cables, and you won't know how to turn that on, because I can still do it. Just tell me. I give you his number too. No, but forget what I was saying. What was I talking about? Praise and worship.
Yeah.
There was a movement. First, it started off as kind of like multicultural in bigger cities, people trying to be integrated, stuff like in the 70s and late 60s, 70s kind of thing. In the early 80s, you started having black churches embracing, because our church was built on Assembly of God doctrine.
Yeah.
Assembly of God. And our church was built with a white couple and a black couple, and they wanted to be different from your typical black church. And I don't think we ever did. Now, but here's what did happen. Because black people came to this black church, they would bring their black church experiences, and we would go through these transitions where, like, if a lady that used to go to St. James came to our church, she would decide that these whack songs we were singing wasn't good enough. So when she got a chance, she would just bust in the power Lord, and people would, like, get with it. But we were always on, like, this weirdness. And me and Tony coming up, and I love him to death. I praise God for him, the late, great Reverend David Wills, who was our worship leader, and he became like the de facto pianist. He taught himself how to play. And then Bobby McCorvey was another one. And I made y'all listen to them 80s songs, right?
He did.
I made y'all listen to them 80s songs. We did a little album back in the 80s,
Really?
in 88 at Agape. And they were doing worship stuff before anybody else was doing it. But we were probably right. We thought it was the most cornballish stuff in the world. Because it was during the Hezzy days and the John P. Key days, and then Kirk was hitting Mississippi Mass, all them choirs and stuff. You know, the workshop choirs, the UNAC choirs, the AIM choirs, and we were the only church not doing this music. We up in here like, we're like, what is this garbage?
Yeah.
We want to go back to the musical in St. James, listen to Eddie, come over and sneak the Nevilles, and we hated it until something turned, and I think the mainstream stuff with like Kirk, you know, was a big part of that. John P. Key is right. He was doing worship songs before other people called it popular. He was doing some worship stuff before other people called it popular. And I can't tell you, because I keep telling you, I wish we had a timeline. When the praise and worship really started becoming a thing, praise team thing, which I really think,
I think it
church
was-
didn't have choirs.
Yeah, it was the praise team is when I think it really kicked off as well, you know, because you're not really having a whole lot of praise team doing a big choir song.
They weren't doing big choir songs.
Exactly, yeah.
So they started doing like little ensemble stuff and stuff
Exactly.
they could sing. And then, of course, then the real problem came into the church with the mime teams, which I always mention. The mimes and the dancers, then they came and then everything went down. But no, but that's a great question. And we really do need a more contemporary history of the transitions of the black church.
What really
Like,
happened was some of y'all don't know how to testify.
Listen. So they cut out the
We had to cut testimony service out.
Up there, test the lion, huh?
Bruh. Or just talking.
He said testify.
Man, I went to the store.
Man, test the lion.
Yeah,
The devil was in my room
We had to
last
cut
night.
that out.
Just
Yeah.
rambling.
Yeah.
They've been up for 15 minutes.
Yeah, we had to cut that out. So we just let the Spirit take over.
Yeah.
And no, you're right. I mean, and that became a thing for us. And so we have it. What I wanted to kind of end off with a little bit, and I don't want to lose my train of thought here, and I feel like I did, and I feel bad. So y'all got to talk about something before it comes back to me, because I had a really good question one day. Oh, that's where it is. The broader culture
Okay.
of norms, beliefs, politics, the tensions America has gone through. We have seen a lot of our evangelical churches, some of them have really leaned into, we're going to be multicultural, we're going to love our brothers and sisters. They might not go as far as putting up Black Lives Matter banners, and they probably shouldn't, because obviously the organization is based on some things, so I get that. But some people have made very strong statements and pushes to really embrace the struggles. Others have gone straight MAGA, American flags everywhere, kind of getting up and preaching on social issues, laws, you know. Have you ever felt times of tension? And it doesn't have to be from leadership. Maybe it could be the vibe of the people, and you just kind of know. A lot of people that come here are probably conservative. A lot of people are probably, and we're conservative, truth be told, as black people. We don't like to talk like that, but we are, you know, a lot of ways. But did you ever have times where you saw, whether maybe it was the Trump era or the Obama era, or you just start to see stuff and you're like, this makes me a little uncomfortable, or I run into people who make me uncomfortable, or you just feel changes? And I want to start with CJ because he was in the heartland at the time. So give us a little bit, like.
It was when the Trump thing messed me up only because people that I thought I knew, their true colors started showing.
Wow.
And these are people that I have been in their house, had dinner with the family. Like when you break bread with somebody, that's a pretty intimate type of setting, because you're having conversations, eating food.
Right.
Having had those conversations, done that, and then you see their Facebook stuff, you're like,
Okay.
and you know what I'm saying? Like these are some of them pastors, some of them just members, just
Right.
You're like,
Because I'm not putting it on the pastors.
100%.
But often
Yeah.
it's just a culture, and you start to notice stuff around you. Like, there's a lot more American flags in this parking lot than it was 3 months ago.
because it's interesting when how does it said? When you're in something, you can't see it.
See it.
You know what I'm saying? When you're in it, you see it, but you don't see it.
Right.
You take a step back and you're like, oh, that was that?
Right.
Is this how? So then you start to question everything. Did y'all really care? Is this really how y'all felt?
Right.
Is this where you know what I'm saying? Like, were you using me? Was I the token? You know what I'm saying? Like that thought has come across my mind multiple times.
Right.
So that's just my experience.
And
Now, did you ever have conversations with them to
a good
express
question.
to express
great
how you
question.
felt?
I think I would have had the conversation with him, Mike, if it would have happened while I was there. Does that make sense? So it was like everything would kind of start to show itself when I was nowhere near.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if it would have happened with me being there, it would have had to be a conversation of, please tell me how you feel about whatever.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or why?
Now at the
why?
time,
Yeah, why?
now, just to be clear, at the time, CJ, did you have the pick with the fist on it in your hair while you were there?
I didn't.
And maybe that was the trigger.
he did not.
He did not.
I did not have hair. I did not have my afro.
I challenge you to go back with that in your and record everything
But
that
I
happens.
I have had long hair being
Right.
in, and I have worn this. Like,
Right.
people don't say nothing. They don't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Larry. So your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a cultural standpoint, I think from, as you call them, the evangelical churches,
Right.
it's interesting, right? Because there's so many important people that go there to where sometimes you feel like it's swayed one-sided.
Right.
Because of, I mean, you know, again, it's a lot of people on payroll, right?
Absolutely.
So they need them dollars and need those people to kind of stay there. So versus, you know, you take your other, you know, your smaller churches,
Right.
They're not focused on that. So they're
Right.
truly giving their true form of opinion, and you're hoping that it is scripture based,
Right.
or biblical based, and not just
Right.
because, you know, I mean,
Patriotism or
Exactly.
nationalism and kind of thing. And you know,
Exactly.
I've heard from my friends in evangelical churches or that have populations where they know a lot of their members come from certain sides of the spectrum, you know, that and there are articles out, podcasts about, especially during the MAGA season, like they were under constant pressure. You talk about the emails about music. there are people saying, you know, one guy was saying, I have some personal friends, like, I'm getting 10 emails from one group of people saying, you better address this from this angle. You know, let's say the gun issue we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
One person saying, you better address these young black men getting shot and da-da-da-da-da. And somebody else is saying, you better address respecting the police and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And like, they're stuck in the middle.
Yeah, and literally, you sometimes find that they're really not even choosing a side.
They're trying not to take a social stance.
They're trying to take that, you know, the middle road.
And that makes a lot of us unsatisfied, and you know, those of us that wanted to find some allyship and say, okay, well, let's let the rubber meet the road. And I've had a couple times, and I won't say names, with people privately invited to lunch, or someone in my office, like literally kind of don't want to be seen, but we need to have this conversation. And when I was more unwise, I would be more aggressive, like, man, you ain't down for us, you know, kind of on that tip. But I did learn to be a little bit more savvy with my approach. And there was one with this last situation with the George Floyd, where I just said, hey, just from my opinion, and maybe even speaking for black culture, just between you and I, like, we value public affirmations of our struggle. We value that if you truly stand with us, you'll be with us and say this is wrong. We're not saying that every time a young black man pulls out a gun, he should live because of whatever. But, and then I started talking to him about policy. And if you know, knowing that you are a conservative-minded person and you have the ear of people that I will never have the ear of, if you do think that this shift in police policy or accountability or whatever might be good for the country and good for your black brothers and sisters, why wouldn't you find a way to advocate for that, knowing that you have the ear of people that we don't have? That if they heard, and I literally told him, I said, I'm just being honest, and we were able to have a good, positive conversation. You have power we don't have.
Exactly.
Because you are their base. And if you were able to rally some of your people, again, not to a whole radical liberal agenda, which I understand people fear. If I go one step, then the floodgates will open and it'll turn into a whole bunch of other stuff. But I would tell them, like, at this point, I don't want to have any more unity conversations. I want to have a policy conversation. Let me know when you want to have a law conversation, not a love conversation.
There you go.
And I'm saying, it's not that I don't believe you love me, because I know you do. But the fact of the matter is that the law and the policies that exist harm people like me. And I'm burying those bodies, and I'm fearing for my children.
Let's
and I told one
it.
brother, and it was Pastor Juan. I can speak Pastor Juan's name because he really walked me through some wonderful things. I said, I had at a point when I was being Mr. Activist guy, I said, I'll never forget, one of my mothers or older sisters of the church walked in my office and saw that I had moved my desk in front of my window, and her eyes just glazed. And she says, Pastor, I don't want your desk facing that window. My back is to the window. And it is still there. But she had a fear for me that they would never be able to relate to, because they have lived through black voices that raised their voices and have suffered consequences. You know, you're talking about people who were raised with church bombings. And we're not just talking 60s. I can tell you about some black leaders right now that have had like skunks left on their doors and little things done to their homes and phone calls with people just breathing this decade. You know what I'm saying? And so I've gotten some of them hang up calls. And one of the pastors actually admitted to me, good friend of mine, a Warren pastor, was like, yeah, your name came up with a gentleman at the store who goes to my church. And he was like, yeah, I don't like that radical guy, man. He sounds like Malcolm X. He sounds like, you know, and he didn't even know we were in relationship, like friendly terms. But that random member, and that same pastor decided to speak up about racial injustice and to say that we can't ignore the pain. He wasn't even trying to, not trying to take a side, but he's like, you got to understand. Yeah. I'm not saying breaking windows is right. I'm not saying, but he was just trying to make a real middle of the road. And a dude came up to him after church and was like, me and a group of people are leaving this church. We've been in a militia group training and waiting for the orders from the president back in the Trump days. Same January. He was like, he confessed, he's like, I had no idea these people went to my church. And I literally just said to him, and then me and Todd came back out. I was like, I did. I was like, I could have told you that. And my message to him was, people who have been traumatized in any way, shape, or form, or lived through oppression, or even as I preached this morning, heard the stories of oppression, they know what they see when they see it. we know what we're hearing when we hear it. And it might seem harmless to you or just really passionate people to you, but we know what we're listening to. So January 6th was not a surprise to us. When you've lived through people running through towns and ransacking homes and dragging Emmett Till out of his house, you know what that conversation sounds like before the action starts. And so what I said to him was, and sometimes I wonder if you, when you serve in those areas, run into this, is like, are you willing to trust black voices when they can tell you things that you don't know? We're telling you, this is what a really angry white mob sounds like, and something's about to pop off if this president keep talking like he's talking. We know what these people, you know what I'm saying? Because like I said, I literally preached on this morning. Like, you're talking about a generation that was raised, put your head down when you walk down the street past somebody.
Yeah.
Don't whistle at a woman. Don't this, don't that. So we know what that angry, they about to ride back around the block and come and do something, pull a shotgun out on the back of it. Like, we know that. So, like, did you trust us when we were warning you when this dude was first running? That even if he didn't have true hate in his heart, just the reckless words he were using were going to ignite somebody. And most of them were going to be people who claim to believe in what you believe in. You know what I'm saying? So I believe there was a lot of tension in blacks who were going to evangelical churches if they weren't. And I believe your pastor was addressing it in a wise way. But a lot of pastors were giving in to the right-wing power brokers, so to speak, and saying, hey, if you're not preaching God and country and America first and blah, blah, blah. And that made a lot of black people who had crossed over start to be like, I need to get back to this hymn book.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Give me that power, Lord, back.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I hate that era. And I think it started with Obama, really, like the backlash. That era, Obama to Trump, has created this breach.
I agree.
And people like myself live in it, to be honest.
And they hit the church real hard.
Yeah.
Hit the church bad.
Hit the church bad, man. But I appreciate you, brothers, man. I mean, y'all let me talk. Y'all talked. Anything you want to add about your experience that has been a fish out of water? So I guess to end with this, do you really feel like a fish out of water? Or do you feel like wherever you are in the kingdom is where you're meant to be?
Amen. You know, hey, wherever I am is where I'm meant to be, right? You know, I mean, we use the scripture, you know, all things work together for the good for those that love God and are called according to his purpose. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I definitely, you know, hear from God. So, you know, I'm not just out here wandering around.
Right.
But, you know, as I hear from God and wherever he tells me to go, you know, from a ministry standpoint as well. And yes, man, I've definitely been placed where I need to be placed by God. So, yeah, definitely.
CJ?
In some of those places, I would say, yes, I was placed where I was supposed to be placed.
Right.
In some of those instances, though, I'm like,
Right.
like, I'm not a fool. I'm
I
not
get
dumb.
you.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like, you're like, I see where I am and I see what God is doing, but I'm not dumb.
Right.
And I'm going to see. You know what I'm saying? Even if you try to hide it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate it. And for the record, both of my brothers here are right now primarily serving in traditional black spaces right now.
Amen.
You know, and what they're doing. So it's funny how they have come back, but those doors are always open, however God leads. You know what I'm saying? Because, I mean, Larry could be Baptist now. I mean, he's tried, he's tried everything else.
Trying to,
I'm just trying to do a little recruiting. Just trying to do a little recruiting. I mean, we need a tenor. You know what I'm saying?
If y'all see me at second,
Y'all see me in a second, we already know. You know, we do that death row pitch. Man, come over here, right on in the videos. No, but I mean, that's a beautiful thing that our generation will be able to say that we were a part of the people who kicked the doors open to both sides of life.
You know, one I'll say this. I'll add this. You know, in my closing, one thing that I can't appreciate.
This is third close because he's about to.
Yeah, hey, come on, hey, we got Kojak closing, man. Come on, man. 5 minutes is 15 minutes.
So give me Terry.
It's like give me 5 Kojak minutes.
Give me 5 Kojak minutes.
But one thing I can't appreciate though in our smaller churches, everybody knows your name,
bruh.
Right? You know, so there seems to be a different closeness.
And your mama name.
You know, sometimes. But with that being said, if you miss Tuesday night service, you ain't saved.
You ain't saved, bro.
You ain't Tuesday. I had something to do.
You need another dip.
But yeah, but so you do appreciate that.
I love it, man. Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Big L. Man, you enjoyed yourself, didn't you?
Hey, yo, he wasn't going. No. Do this. He's I want to do this.
I'm normally chilling in the background.
Yeah.
I really got pulled in, but it's all good though.
But when I say this, bruh, I'm not gassing you up. You're intelligent. You got a lot to offer. Your experiences are probably things that people need to hear. You know, you're level-headed and minded. You stand on your ground. I know that from personal conversation. You stand your ground, and I appreciate it, man. That's what it's all about. So we appreciate y'all. Hey, y'all give it up real quick for CJ and Big L for joining us in Religiously Incorrect. And again, a very happy birthday to Pastor Jeff,
Happy birthday, good
who
sir.
is celebrating his 50th year. He is officially an old man. I'm glad they didn't put one of them pictures up. You know how churches be putting them celebration pictures up of the pastor and you think they died?
Yes.
Because they be like in clouds.
Yes.
Hey, when he come out, put a cane like next to his chair.
Listen, we're gonna have a whole
We got a
kit of old man supplies for him.
got
We have
you,
like
sir.
diapers.
ARP applications.
You're like, you need to drive a Buick from now on with the big buttons. So we appreciate it. Thank y'all for watching. Keep liking, keep sharing, keep tagging. Hey, if there's a subject we haven't touched, and maybe we haven't touched it in a while or we haven't touched it at all, man, send us an email, religiouslyincorrectpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. There are some things I want to touch on. We've been on air for 4 years now, and there might be some subjects we circle back to that we were basically had a whole different audience. So it's like a great way of coming back to it. But I appreciate you watching. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our viewers. Let's keep building this up, y'all. Until next time, love, peace, chicken grease.
All right, we're
Take
going to
care.
end like this.
We're going to end like this? Don't do it. Don't do it.
What we doing?
I'm healed in my mind. Hey,
And your mics are on, so let's go.
I'm healed in my soul.
Oh, this is a closing song.
This is the closing song.
When I
This is not
count
happening.
your name.